Let's knit the How to Knit blanket by yarnspirations.com. This is perfect for beginners or someone who wants to knit with their family while watching TV. Welcome back to another Yarnspirations tutorial. I'm your host, Kristen Mangus of GoodKnitKisses. Let's get started. In today's tutorial, you'll knit a super bulky number 6 weight yarn. We're using Bernat Softee Chunky. In contrast A is Gray Heather. In contrast B is Soft Taupe. In contrast C is Stillness Ombre.
To download your pattern, click on the link in the description below.
I'm so glad you joined me to learn how to knit a blanket. We'll be working with squares. They will all be the same, and we'll stitch them all together to make a pattern in 3 different colors. You're going to need, of course, your needles. You can use straight or circular. I've used circular in mine, but straight will be just fine. You'll probably need about a 14-inch length on this needle. The yarn you'll need is 6 balls of Bernat Softee Chunky, contrast A in Gray Heather, contrast B Soft Taupe, also 6 balls, and 7 balls of contrast C Stillness Ombre or Ombre, however you want to say it. And the reason why you need a little bit more of this last one is because the ball has fewer yards than these other 2 colors. All right, so you've got your needles, you've got your yarn. You'll also need scissors, a wide-eyed tapestry needle for sewing things together. Don't worry, I'll show you how to do everything you need. You'll also need a measuring tape to ensure you've got the right size. I will go through everything that you need to make one of these squares. We are going to be learning some terms. So if you are new, we'll be casting on, which is doing the starting edge here. We'll be making the knit stitch, which is what makes up the entire body, okay, this main part. And then we'll be binding off or casting off. Okay, so we'll cast off the stitches here to finish it up, and then we will also be joining yarns, and I'll show you how to weave in these tails so that it literally disappears in it. We also will be weaving in the tails for the beginning and the end, for the bind on, for the cast on and the bind off or cast off. And I will show you a few other things, how to turn the fabric and also how to stitch them together. We will be putting them together and stitching together in a pattern. Once you learn how to do this, you'll be able to do most basic and easy patterns. I'm so glad you're going to get started with me. Be sure and click on the link in the description below to get your pattern and look that over. Be sure and print it out and have it next to you while we go. See you soon. Grab your supplies. Okay, you've printed off your pattern and you're ready to get started. Let's go over the instructions here. And if you've never looked at a pattern before, this is your chance to see an overview. So in this area, we've looked at what the materials are needed. Down here is the abbreviations, and they actually will spell out most of these over here. But this just kind of gets you introduced to patterns and how they start shortening words. Over here is telling us that we're at a beginner level. And this first little dot here is shaded in. This is the measurement. If you make it in a 12 by 12 square, the entire blanket would be a 48 by 60 inch. And then the gauge simply refers to how many little stitches are across and down. So across is how many stitches and down is how many rows in the 4-inch area. We're not going to go terribly into that this time, but I will let you know that these are supposed to be 12-inch squares and mine are actually 11. So when I put on my stitches, my 30 stitches it calls for, I got 11 inches. And so it asks us to knit to approximately 12 inches and it's supposed to be a square. So I only knit to 11 inches and then I did my cast off. Okay, so in the instructions of a pattern, they're all right here. You always want to look at these first notes before you just jump into where the cast on is. We're making squares. Make 7 each with color A and B, and then make 6 with color C. You can also verify that by looking at this assembly diagram. We'll be casting on or getting the yarn on our needles 30 stitches. We'll work in a garter stitch, and which is knitting every row. And the garter stitch simply is something like this. Okay, so it appears to have these ridges, and you can see that there's horizontal, and then if you turned it, it's vertical. And when we look at our instructions here, after we cast off, after the 12 inches or to make it square, we look at the finishing area and it says sew the squares together into 4 strips with 5 squares each, arranging with the garter ridges running horizontally and vertically, and then you just see the diagram and you sew them together. So we will go over all of that. This diagram is showing light and dark squares, and that's just showing which direction they're running. And then also the colors are listed here. I hope that helps you in looking at the overview of the pattern. We'll be referring this off to the side. Let's jump in and get the yarn on those needles. See you soon. Okay, we want to get the yarn on our needles and cast on. As a bonus, I'm going to add in 2 other cast-ons at the end of this video. So if you want a different cast-on, just fast forward all the way to the end after the credits and you will see 2 more cast-ons. We're going to do the long tail cast-on for this method because it's used so many times. I'm going to pull out about 3 times the width that I want. So my squares are going to be 12 inches. So let's just pull out about a yard, which is 36 inches, and add a little bit more for a tail. When you get to that point, that we're going to make a slip knot. If you don't know how to make a slip knot, an easy way to do it is just to wrap it around your finger a couple of times, take that back loop and move it slightly in front of that first loop on your finger, and then now take the new back loop and move it up and over that loop and over the tip of your finger, and now you have a slip knot. We're going to take our knitting needles and take one and insert it in, and tug on that just to make it nice and snug. We don't want it to fall off, but we don't want it to be super tight. So we want to make sure that this tail that has the end on it is toward us, and the part that's coming from the ball or the skein, it's going to be called our working tail or working yarn. And so the ball is to the back and the tail is toward. So we're going to take these 2 pieces and hold them in our left hand. This tutorial is right hand only here. We're going to hold this in our hand. I'm going to grab it with these 3 fingers, and then with my index finger and my thumb, I just split that yarn there. Pull back like a slingshot. We're going to scoop up through the thumb, down through where the finger is, and then down through the thumb. Let it go with my thumb, and then I kind of just use my thumb to pull on it to make these even. So let's do that again. Pull it back. We're going to scoop up, go down, and then down through the thumb and let it go. Pull back, scoop up through the thumb, down through the finger, down through the thumb, let it go. And we just want to be nice and consistent. It's going to be able to slide and fit another needle in there later, but it's not going to fall off either. So we don't want it too loose, we don't want it too tight. Once you have done that, go ahead and pause your video and rewind and fast forward, whatever you need to do. But I will meet you back up when you have 30 of these loops on your needles. See you soon. All right, now we're going to make the knit stitch. This is the only stitch you need to know for this entire project. So for the first stitch here, I'm going to teach you how to talk about these. This is the legs. Imagine this is a cowboy sitting on his horse, and this is his right leg, and this is his left leg. We're going to go into the front, like the front of this needle, the part that's facing you, and we're going to go into between this first and second cowboy here, the first and second loop. We're going to knit into that first stitch here into the front leg, and we're going to take our working yarn that's coming from the ball and wrap it around that back needle, and we're going to pull it on through so that we make a new loop here. Now we just take it and slide off this old stitch here and down. What it does is it creates a new stitch here. Let's do that again. We're going to go into that first leg of that stitch, wrap around, and pull through a new stitch. Let that other one go. Just kind of swipe it off. Now we've got our yarn. You don't have to worry about how you're holding it when you're first learning. I kind of naturally hold it like this now, but when I first started, I just individually moved this yarn this way. So let's just hold it, not hold it proper, but to show you how to do this, just holding it as if you're a total beginner. So we're going to go straight into here like this. We're going to take this ball yarn and just wrap it around. Okay, now I like to pull on it a little bit, and you can put it between your fingers to pull on it, but I pull on a little bit so that when I go through here, it's not too loose. Okay, so we're just going to take it and swipe it off there to the right. If you're left-handed, you do it exactly the opposite. And when you make these stitches, you can see how the stitches here make this little V. Okay, do you see this V stitch here? Okay, so that's what you're working on, and that's the front of a knit stitch. We're going to continue going along, And be sure and rewind and pause the video. You can also use the controls on a desktop or laptop from YouTube to be able to hit that slow button. And you're going to continue. When we finish this row, we'll meet back up. I'll show you what to do on the next row. Pause your video and I will see you in a little bit. Okay, I've just knit this last stitch at the end of the row. You can see all my little knit stitches way down here. I'm going to take my needle and move it over, turn it to the left side again. So I'm holding all the old stitches in my left and I'm working with my right hand. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that first stitch a little tighter just to make sure it's not super loose. Insert in again and we're going to start over. So here we go. We start again, the new row, wrap around and pull that on through, and remember to knock that one off or swipe that one off, okay, the old one. So we're gonna use our working yarn and wrap around and make that new stitch, and then make sure and get that old stitch off. If you knit it and go like this and then you don't let this one go and you just continue, it may become a little bit of a mess for you. If you somehow get it on here like this, like somehow you've got 2 stitches here, it can be a little strange and you might lose track of your stitch count. So you want to make sure that you've gone through that stitch all the way. So if I have double stitches here and I knit the next one, here, let's see if I knit this next one. I may have this weird sort of thing happening on the next row, and this means that this one didn't go over, so you might have to go backward. If you do have to go backward and fix a mistake, let's just do that right now. I'm going to insert my left needle, and I like to pull back on this yarn a little bit to give myself some room. I'm just going to insert into that hole there, and then once it's on this needle, I'm going to go ahead and let this drop off, okay, and then it takes it out or frogs it. It tinks or knit. It's called knit backwards. It's knit spelled backwards. It's called tink. So now I have this loose piece of yarn that I don't need right there. So I'm just going to put that to the back, and I found my mistake. But if I look at the back here, let's go back here. So you can see that the working yarn is coming from this stitch and not this stitch. That means that this one didn't get worked. So I can just take it and pick it back up and put it over here. I want to make sure that those legs are facing the right way. If I just slip it over this way, the stitch is now twisted. Do you see that? So I can just move my needles around and pick it up and then place it back in the right way. You can also use your fingers, but depending on how big or little your stitches are and how comfortable you are with it, it's easier just to do it with the needles. Let them work for you, do all that work. So now that I have my yarn coming from this previous stitch, I can just do this one over again, wrap it around, pull that on through, and then let that other one fall off. Okay, so now I've created again. Now if you notice when you're making this round, do you see how it looks like there is this bump instead of those V's? Well, if you look down further, you can see the V. So when we turn it on the back of the work, what's happening is you can see these V's here are actually from the cast on, and then these purl bumps, these things here are the back of this V stitch over here. So you're seeing the reverse side. On the wrong side, a knit stitch looks like this little bump out or purl. Okay, so if you peel it back this way, you can see the new V or knit stitches that you had just created. Okay, so every time you turn the row, you're going to see these little edges that are from the previous row on the other side. That is what's called a garter stitch or garter ridge, and that's how it gets those ridges. So as I work across here, I'll show you how that works. So as soon as I make that stitch, I turn it over here, and you're actually going to see bumps appear, and see how they're really close up to the back of this needle here. They look like a little scarf. On this side, they're further down, and that's because it's a knit stitch on this front side. All you need to worry about is the fact that you just made knit stitches. So you just make those knit stitches, and you will work until you have enough to make a square. Now, you will get enough length, and I'll show you one here. You will get enough length to continue going. And when you start measuring, when you can, and you've got enough length here, it's far enough away from the needle, go ahead and measure with your tape how wide it is from here to here. If you have 12 inches, then you are going to knit until you measure from this cast on or beginning edge until you're here about 12 inches. On mine, I've got 11 inches. So I'm going to knit to 11 inches because I want to make a nice square. So work until you are at that point, and I will meet you back up and we will bind off or cast off. But I'm going to stop the video before that and show you how to add in yarn if you need to add in new yarn. So let's go ahead and add in this yarn together. Okay, so I've knitted until I am ready for adding in some yarn, and I've got about a 6-inch tail here, and you can certainly add it at the beginning of the row, and if you were changing colors, this is exactly where you would do that, and I'll show you how to do that. However, I recommend actually, if you've got long enough to go in 3 or 4 stitches at least, and knit to change your color in here. It actually is easier to weave in the tails, and I'll show you how to weave in the tails that way as well. So you're just going to put your old tail to the back here and just hold on to it just to keep this stitch from being too loose while you're knitting, and then take the new tail of the new ball and lay it next to it as well. And it's just as simple as making a knit stitch. So we're going to go into that stitch there, take that new yarn, wrap it around and pull it on through, and then let that stitch go. Go to the next one and keep going. Now if you notice, I am holding on back here. I'm trapping these yarns in just with my hands and holding on to it. And after I've done several stitches in, I really can drop them, and I don't need them because they were just trying to make sure that this stitch stayed even, knitting even stitches along. And then you're just continuing on with your work. If at all available, you could do the same thing with starting in the middle of the row. And you've got a big choice here because it's all the same yarn and it's not trying a different color. So if I was starting a new color, I would start at the very edge like this. But let's say that I started right in the middle here and kept going, then this is where I would just start holding in my new yarn. So if you need to, you can go back a few stitches and start in the middle of this last row if you needed to, or just over about this far. This is about 6 stitches in. All right, so let's keep going. I'll show you how to weave in the tails later, but now go ahead and knit until you've got your inches to make a square, either the 12 inches, or if you're like me and you got about 11-ish, you're going to knit until that length there. Use your measuring tape and just start measuring here with the 0. Measure here until you get your inches right until this last little bump here, and then you know that you've got enough. All right, continue going, and I'll show you how to cast off. See you soon. All right, we're ready to finish off this square. I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches as usual. So knit that first stitch and the second stitch. All right, so once we have 2 stitches on our right needle, we're just going to take that first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. So take the back loop and move it over the tip of your needle over the front loop, and it makes a nice little chain right here on the top. All right, so then you just keep repeating. You're going to make a second stitch. So this one's always counting as your first stitch. Go ahead and knit the next one, and then take that first stitch and move it over the second. And then you got another chain. And so it's going to continue to make this line across the top. You want to stay nice and loose. Don't be tight. Have tension. Make sure and relax or take a stretching break and lift this up and over. So all the main stitches that you've done, you can really do while you're watching TV, and it's really easy, but you might find if you're a beginner, you might not want to cast off while you're watching TV or something the first few until you're very comfortable with it. So just continue knitting those stitches and lifting that back loop over. You'll see this little chain start to form here. And meet me back up when you're at the end and you have just a few stitches left. I'll see you soon. Pause your video. I've got 3 stitches left. Continue knitting along, lifting that back loop over, and then we're on the last stitch here. Knit it as usual, lift that back loop over. If you see this is a little loose here, no worries, I'll show you how to fix that. Lift that back stitch over Okay, and now the way to get that out is you're just going to clip your yarn. Mine's already cut here, so I'm just going to pull that all on through. Make sure and give yourself a nice little tail. So if you notice it's uneven like this, I take my needle here, and before I start trying to weave in my end, I actually try and look at this loop. If I have a lot of if I do have a lot of extra here, I'll just pull that loop in and then study my stitches, and then I can start pulling in the extra slack just a little bit, not too tight, and I want to match the stitches here. So I just kind of pull back between these two ridges and start easing that tension to kind of take in that extra slack there. And so we're just making it nice and even. Give it a little bit of a tug, and it's really hidden. Okay, the rest of this is going to hide into your stitches into your blanket when you stitch it all together. So now we can start weaving in the ends. I'm going to show you how to put together the ones that are in between here. These are the ones where we added in the yarn. Okay, so if you were right in the middle like this, what you want to do is get your tapestry needle out. So pause your video as you need, and we will work on weaving these in. All right, let's talk about weaving in these ends here where we've attached the yarn. Now, I had loosely just tied a little bit of a, not a knot, but just kind of loosely tied that there to just kind of keep my tension nice and even as I was working. But when I undo it, you can see that this stitch is not complete. Next to it, you can see that there's this little sort of smile here. Okay, it goes underneath here, and if I skip over here, there's a smile over here. So you can see that this yarn needs to go stretch around. So that's really what we're going to be doing to start this off. So we're going to take our needle here and get our tapestry needle ready with one of these ends. It doesn't matter which side. I usually kind of just put this one over, okay, the one I'm not working with, and take my yarn and go up through this hole here. Okay, go up through this bump, and obviously I'm moving the other one down so it's not in the way. So when I pull that in like this, it now looks more like the rest of this line. See how that's more hidden, and we can just pull on it to make the tension the same. So now what I want is to make sure that the rest of these kind of fall into place. So I can go around these this little sort of smile and this sort of umbrella. Okay, so this little upside down smile here. So we're going to go around to lock them in. So what I can do is now I'm near this one, I can go up through here. Okay, go up through this little area here, and then we're going to go mirror over this side here. So see how it does this little leapfrog from this little bump over here and down. And then I can actually go downward into this ridge down here as well. So if I go down, I want to go in an area where when I come out, I can kind of leap over this way as well. So let's just go down this way and pull it. Make sure that I'm not pulling it too tight. Okay, and then I'm going to go up again. So I go around here, follow it around, and then go up, and I'm going to go back through that same bump that I went through here. Okay, and see how it's disappearing? Okay, that yarn is, you're not really able to see it. If I take this off here, let me show you with the contrasting yarn what it does. So let's take this one, and it's the same principle, and I'm just going to pick any spot. Let's move over here. And let's say I want to go around here. So I'm going up through this little spot here, and I'm going to mirror and go around here, and then I want to go down. And if you've ever seen that sort of Christmas candy that has this kind of, it's like an old-fashioned candy that zigzags around like a serpent shape, that's exactly what I'm doing. You'll see this kind of form up here. So I'm going to go around this spot here, and then go back up to where I just came from. You see that? Pull it up. And then go around again, follow that. And then go down where I just came out of there. And even the tension, and just keep going around. And so what happens is you're creating this sort of, like I was talking about, a Christmas candy sort of look. And this kind of makes it fun to weave in the ends. Weaving in ends aren't really fun, but if you think about it that way, it's easier, especially on a garter stitch. So this is a really great way to make your garter stitch work for you. So just continue with that and over here, and whenever you get to the point of needing to finish this one off and clip it, you want to work in a few inches, and you can go back over some of your stitches to really lock that in. So here we go. I'm going to go here, and then I can even go backward, go back over one of these other stitches, and come through one more time. Oops. Pull that on through. And even that out with my needle. And when I know that I'm ready, I can go ahead and just clip that off. And then the other one as well. So I would just, now that I've already got that done, I can just work my way on this side, and I know that I have got it all locked in. So you want to do that on all of your stitches where you've had to join up the yarn. Again, this is just to show contrasting so that you know what it'll look like. And I can just pull this on out. You're going to want to make you're going to want to make 7 each of each color, the colors A and B, and then color C you only need to make 6. And we'll meet back up, and I'll show you how to weave in all of your tails from the beginning and end, and then we will sew it on up together. See you soon. Okay, so I'm at the end here where I have one of my tails, and I've put my tapestry needle in, and I'm going to go and pick this little purl bump that's sticking out here and go through that. Okay, so it kind of finishes off and completes the end of that row there, so it's not kind of over a little bit. And then now I'm going to pick up this little purl bump here, just go right through there, and it's just going to get me down one more row, and then I'm going to move over one so that I can do what I've been doing on the other ones, where I go around and then back and around again and back around again. So I'm just going to go over one row, or one column here actually, and down. And now I can move around here and go up and go back up through here, so I can do that little around trick that we had going on. So here I go, and I'm just going to leap around and continue the process that we were doing earlier. And you'll do this on all of them, and then when you are done weaving in all your tails, you are ready to start putting this blanket together. All right, pause your video, and I will meet you back when you are done. See you soon. Okay, so you've got all your squares ready to go, and I'm just showing you a sample here of what it looks like stitched up. It looks really nice and flat. There is no ridge here on either side, so I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. You're just going to need some of your yarn that you have left over. Doesn't matter which color, and you'll need your scissors and a wide-eyed tapestry needle and your pattern. And we have the assembly diagram. You're just going to be taking these and laying them out in the right patterning. So just concentrate on one of these columns at a time. Grab 5 of them in the right color order. So B, A, C, B, A, or you can start over here. It doesn't matter. And then you want to make sure and line up the ridges either vertically or horizontally. So wherever you see it with white, you're going to use this little key down here, and you're going to make sure the ridges are running this direction for horizontal. Okay, so these ridges are along this way. Whenever you see it gray, you're going to run the ridges vertically like this. Okay, all right, so I'm going to show you how to stitch this up. Grab your supplies, and I will see you in a second. Okay, so I've got this lined up. This is one on the top left of my diagram. I've got B here with it running horizontal, and I've got A running vertical that's going below it. Now I want to stitch up from right to left here, or left to right, whichever one you're more comfortable with. I actually find that if I turn it this way and I kind of push them together like this, it actually is easier for me to see what stitches I need to work with. So I want you first to notice this area here. This is either, it doesn't matter, either your cast on edge or your bind off or cast off edge. So they both look the same. They have this chain throughout here like this. See these little sides of the knit stitches here. And so you're going to be picking up one of these legs here, and then on the purl bumps you'll be picking up one of these outside purl bumps here. So or it's like from the top side of this one here. So first we need to go in I'm going from the right side. You can start from the right to the left, just be consistent with how you do it. I'm just going to pick up this here on the very edge, pull through my scrap piece of yarn, leave a little bit of a tail, and I've got about 3 times the length here of this width and enough for a tail on either end. And I'll go to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, pick that up, pull that through. Get my tail out here. Okay. And then I'm going to go back through there one more time. And this is the only time I do that. And we'll just pull that nice and snug. Not super tight in case you've got it a little offset, but you want to make sure that these are lined up. You're going to want to make sure this all stays lined up here. Okay, so I'm going to first come to the right side over here, and I'm going to pick up this first stitch that I come to. Okay, go through it, pull our yarn through, and I'm going to go over on this left side over here and pick up this outside purl bump here, pull all the way through, go to my right and pick up this leg of the stitch here. Okay, so we're just going through this little side area, the top leg of that stitch here on the top side, and then go over to this other side and pick up that purl bump there. And so I'm just zigzagging across the top, making what sort of looks like a little whip stitch going around, but I'm really just grabbing the front of it. I'm not going through completely to the other side. If I did go to the other side, it would create a ridge. So just continue going across and then picking up that purl bump. Now you can also pick up 2 at the same time. I would be careful about doing it too quickly though. Pick up 1 and then the next, and then guide your yarn through it very gently so that you're not pulling it too tightly. Okay, so you want to make it really consistent. And then the time will come where you may have too many on one side versus the other, and you may have to go back a little bit just to make sure that it's all lining up correctly. But what happens is when you get along here, you may decide that this knitting here is maybe just slightly shorter, and so you'll have to just pick up a few more stitches in here to accommodate on the other side. And what I do in that case is, let's say I need to pick up a couple extra stitches on this side, I would just go back through one of these and then pick up the next one down and then continue on. So we want to kind of keep them all lined up, but if you have to ease that fullness there, it's a sewing term, if you need to ease that up, then that's a nice easy way to do it. If you find that you're all the way to the end and then it's kind of puckering up, you may have to pull out a few stitches and just go back. And once you've done a few of these, you've really gotten the hang of it for later on, and you'll have the technique down for sewing all these panels in. I would suggest if you're doing this as a family project that maybe only one person or 2 people do the sewing part, but everybody else is doing the little the knitting part, and then that way the sewing is a little bit more the same. Okay, so keep on going with your sewing, and we'll meet back up and I'll show you how to connect those panels. All right, see you soon. All right, so once you have made your strips, then you're just going to line up all 4 of these strips and continue sewing just like you have been. And then so when you're sewing here on the right, you're gonna be picking up one stitch from here and then the front of this purl, and then you switch it up because it turns the opposite way. And whenever you get to the corners here, you might just want to whip in one more stitch around just to make sure that it doesn't pull, because you have a little bit more weight on here, and just continue going up. Then you just want to weave in all those extra tails and you are done. And here's what it looks like right here with it all stitched together. And you might want to add just one more stitch in here to make sure it is all nice and shored up. Well, look at this beautiful family here enjoying their knitting that they've made together. I hope you enjoy making your knit blanket. On behalf of Yarnspirations and Good Knit Kisses, I'm your host, Kristen, wishing you happy knitting. Bye-bye. We have 5 on here. You'll keep going until you get all the stitches that you need. Okay. Now, if you decide that you don't like that method, what we can do is start at the beginning. So you just have a much shorter tail. So let's pretend this is our shorter tail, and we go ahead and put on this needle here. Okay, put our slip knot on, and then you can actually do what's called a thumb cast on or backwards loop. You just pull out the main ball. So like, let's say this is our tail and this is what's coming from the ball. Okay, so we hold the shorter tail here, pull this out, and with our left thumb, we're going to put it down onto that yarn here and scoop it up, like flip our thumb, and then we just scoop it up through the thumb area and then let go. Here we go again, pull it out, push down with our thumb, spin it around, scoop it up with the needle and let it go. So when you do it this way, it actually is a looser cast on, but it's really quick. So if you just want something quick and no worries, then you can do that. That's another really easy method. There's also a knitted cast on method, which reinforces the knit stitch. And when we do that, you do the same thing as the thumb loop cast on. You have only a small tail. You actually turn it over to the right side and you'll be making what's called a knit stitch. So I'm going to take my other needle now and I go into that slip knot, that first loop on here, insert our needle in, take our working yarn. So I have a small tail here, and I take what's coming from the ball and I'm going to wrap it around the needle this way. Okay, this is also a precursor to having this, a preview to having a knit stitch. So we take our yarn, wrap it around that needle that's in the back, and then pull it through. You're pushing that yarn up through the front of that. Okay, so now we just take this yarn, we take the needle, the right needle, and twist it to the right, and then we take that left needle and twist it into the front of that loop here. See that? And then we let go with our right, and now we have 2 stitches on. Let's do that again. Insert into that front leg of that stitch there, work that around. Okay, so take our working yarn over, wrap it around, and pull it through to make a new loop, twist it to the right, twist our left one as well, and insert into that stitch there, and then let go. Okay, and then this is the knitted cast on. Okay, so you would just cast on until you have 30 stitches in this method.